Back live with you here on News at Prime. The High Court in Johannesburg has dismissed an application for the eviction of illegal occupants from two hijacked commercial buildings in Doornfontein. Property owners Whitehall Trading and Opal Wall Trading argued that there was a risk of fire, referencing recent incidents in the city center. Let's discuss this now with the Socio-Economic Rights Director, Nomzamo Zondo. Nomzamo, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time. This, of course, on the backdrop of those hearings that are currently going on because of the fire that started in the Usindiso building. Are you in any way involved with this particular legal action?
Good evening, Thabo. Thank you for having me. So SERI represents the unlawful occupiers. It's in fact 5 buildings, not 2. We have represented at least 1 building since 2011. The owner had brought eviction proceedings as far back as 2011 in some of those 5 buildings. The most recent action that they took was to bring an application to consolidate the different evictions in 2017. We were involved in litigation with them and the city of Johannesburg. Since 2018, the city of Joburg has been meant to be in a process to relocate the occupiers to alternative accommodation. Unfortunately, in the 5 years since then, that has not happened. The owner then brought this application, which was brought in September of last year, immediately after the Usindiso fire and the Delvas 1A street fire, which had happened 2 weeks after Usindiso. And his argument was that there are these fires and the occupiers in these buildings would then be at risk because of that. Of course, on the backdrop of what we've heard in the Usindiso Commission, we now know that, for instance, the Usindiso fire was possibly arson. And in that backdrop, then it makes sense not to say that you can't move and jeopardize the homes of close to 1,000 people because of something that's happened elsewhere, without showing a connection to the 5 buildings that the court was looking at.
Yeah. So, I mean, last conversation with the MMC was that their approach now, more than eviction, maybe that's the language that they used in the court papers, but they were saying evacuation more than eviction, so that they could put this dilapidated building at least in an inhabitable condition for people then to be returned to it. Is SERI completely opposed to that approach?
No, we are not. In fact, we support that approach. As an example, we're involved in litigation which was brought by the city in December. And the only question we brought to the court was, where would our clients go, when and how? And the city was unable to answer that question. And because of that, their application was dismissed. So evacuation at the very least assumes that there must be a plan for people to be moved somewhere. And of course, the residents who have been living in the inner city, some like the residents of the buildings that we were speaking about earlier, who've lived for at least a decade or even 2 decades in the inner city, do not want to be moved too far away from the city, but also want to be moved into humane and dignified circumstances. For what we know, the Denver or the Shalazile TRA is not those circumstances. Since the occupiers of Usindiso were moved there, they've experienced 3 floods. And of course, that has been, I think, fortunately, and we're grateful for the media of this, reported on by the media. But we have not heard the MMC, we have not heard the city of Johannesburg speak to why the former occupiers of Usindiso have been put in those circumstances. For us and our clients, in fact, even as far back as 2011, when we initially represented the residents of Lion Leather House in Davis Street, their call has always been, we can move, but we are unable to house ourselves. And therefore, we are looking to the state to put us in a place where we can be able to live with our families and continue living a dignified life. And unfortunately, the city of Johannesburg has not been able to answer that call, despite litigation, despite case management, despite even both the property owners and the occupiers agreeing that the relocation is necessary. That has not happened.
But even the courts themselves agree, I suppose, the state of disrepair that these buildings are on. So should we wait until a fire breaks out before we do anything?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And I mean, if when you get an opportunity to read that judgment that was written by Judge Meyer, you'll get to understand that the chief objection is saying people must then be put in tents, must be evicted on 2 days' notice, purely because the city is being told to provide now when they have no plan. What needs to happen, what we've been calling for not only from the city of Johannesburg, but from the province and from national government, is to have a plan on the inner city to find alternative housing sites, to engage occupiers, and those who are living in buildings that are unsafe, for them to be moved. I doubt that any of them would be opposed to relocation if they're being relocated by agreement. Similarly, I think for even those who are living unlawfully in the city in much safer buildings, they would rather live legally, have some sort of security of tenure, and they can't have that purely because the formal market doesn't provide for them. The formal market within the inner city, even arguably out in the townships, is not affordable enough for people who are sometimes unemployed or are earning minimum wage.
So in the recent fire, we're dealing with a building that apparently is ownerless. This time around, we know who the owners are of the property because, of course, they are in charge of this particular legal battle. Why are they not taking the responsibility of rehabilitating that building?
Look, I think for instance, in these specific 5 buildings, they were bought as an investment. In fact, I know for a fact that one of the 3-story buildings was bought for 50,000 rand, but they were bought as an investment to turn them into student accommodation. So I assume that the property owners are not interested in securing the buildings or making the buildings safer for as long as the unlawful occupiers are there. We have tried, in fact, in this specific case, to engage the owner, to engage the city about taking steps to make the building safer, following another court order where the city was ordered to engage with us. And the city, in fact, the response was the order only ordered them to engage. They don't have to meet with us. They don't have to take any specific steps to make the building safer. And unfortunately, because that's been their stance, all of us have been stuck. In this case specifically, the owners and the occupiers have been singing from the same hymn book. Is in fact only in relation to this urgent that the city supported the stance of the occupiers by saying because it has nowhere to put them, we would not want them to be put out onto the street or to be put somewhere on 48 hours notice and have to live in tents or something worse.
So are you back at that stalemate then at this particular point with this particular court ruling?
And it is really unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's a stalemate because all that is required for us to move is for the city of Johannesburg to offer alternative accommodation for these occupiers. And in this specific case, there's even prior experience which shows that it can be resolved. So these 5 buildings used to be 6 buildings. And the 6th building was the occupants of the 6th building were moved to the Wembley TRA in 2018. When the relocation happened, the building was closed. Similarly here, if the city could simply offer the alternative accommodation to the occupiers, then the occupiers would be moved and the property owner would have their property.
Nomzamo, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on.